Hello there, people and listeners of the Hungry Podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome James Cosmo onto the Hungry Podcast. James had a glittering acting career, featured in some of, my favourite films and films we'll all know: Braveheart, Trainspotting, Troy, Head of the Night's Watch in Game of Thrones. I think you're a finalist in Big Brother. You've had a very illustrious career. But more importantly and more recently, James has launched a whiskey brand called The Storyman, which is, we've actually got a couple of bottles in front of us right now. It's a convivial spirit, if I ever said that right. Convivial, there we go. Good start. Inspired by James Cosmo, handcrafted the Annandale distillery and shared by you. We'll probably have to maybe try some shortly.
Yeah.
But gorgeous branding, and what I'm so excited to explore to you today is, as we were talking about before we hit the record button, is I really believe every brand is a story. There's the guy from that book, Sapiens. I don't know if you've ever read Sapiens.
Oh, yeah, you're Harari.
Yeah. He says a business is just a fiction.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. It's like the way
that we buy into.
You've got to buy into it. As a founder, you've got to sell your story to get investors on, to get people on, to negotiate.
And, that's right.
And I really believe the brand is a story. It's the story is the linking thing between the founder's soul as a brand and the bigger thing. Almost like the brand and the packaging is the vehicle for the story.
Yeah.
But where I want to start is I in conversation with this, as I said, I rewatched Braveheart, rewatched Trainspotting, and
you poor man, you must be sick of the sight.
I feel like I've spent a lot of time with you, James, before we've even hit the record button. But the opening scene in Trainspotting is one of the most powerful opening scenes I think in a film. For listeners, you watch it on YouTube. It's Iggy Pop. They're running down the Edinburgh High Streets, and I actually listened to a podcast with Irving Walsh, Irving Walsh, who is the writer of Trainspotting, and he said the opening scene is everything. And he talked about the famous Boogie Night scene, John Travolta. You got the in the background. Where I'm going with this is I listened to another podcast you did, and you said, I'm an actor to my bones. I can't be anything else, even if it's hard.
Yeah.
And I'd love to, if we could pick a specific day when you were growing up in Glasgow, that could be like your opening scene to this conversation, right? And I want to use that to explore why I'm an actor to my bones. I can't be anything else. What would that opening scene be for you, do you think, James?
I got into acting when I was 17 years old, and I left school when I was 15. I hitchhiked down to London when I was 17. My mum supported us. She worked in the Singers factory in Clydebank, my sister and I. I sort of wheedled my way in. My father was an actor who lives down there in London, down here. And I sort of wheedled my way in, pretending I was an actor. Been pretending ever since. I didn't go to drama school, didn't do anything. I learned from people that really knew what they were doing and kept my eyes open and watched that. But it wasn't the first job or the second. No, it was the second job I did, which was a film called The Battle of Britain. And I played a fighter pilot in that. And I had a Triumph Vitesse convertible. The film was paying well, and I got this car. And we were filming up in Cambridge, and I was whizzing down the A1 or whatever, in this convertible. And I thought, I don't want to be anything else. This is just beautiful. I love it. I don't want to do theatre. I want to do movies. That's what I wanted. And that's what I stuck to. That's what I did.
I suppose, so the first question is there's a lot of people wanting to be an actor, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people wanting to be a movie star. There's a lot of people...
And there's a big difference.
There's a big difference, right?
Yeah.
What is the difference between wanting to be an actor and a movie star in your definition?
Well, I think people want to be movie stars because they don't know what being a movie star is. I have observed and had a slight... by no means a star of anything, but I've observed, I've seen it firsthand, and it's it's not particularly enjoyable or gratifying to be a film star. That doesn't really mean anything. You're just someone that's recognised in a film. What does that mean? It doesn't mean, it means fuck all.
Yeah.
Being an actor, people saying, God, I love the character that you played, you know, and I really believed in that character. You brought some sort of life to what was written on a page. You brought that person to life and he seemed real to the audience. That's what being an actor is. Being a movie star, fuck that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And so you wanted to be an actor, not a movie star?
Absolutely, yeah. Always have been. Oh, I've always thought that and it's not through some sort of reverse egotism, but I've always thought that celebrity, if you like, is the collateral damage to what you do as a film actor. It's just something that happens. You know, some people think that you are that character, that you are that heroic character. You're not. You're just someone that pretends to be that heroic character.
I was listening to a podcast it's like maybe a bit like Inception, a podcast about how to create a podcast yesterday. And there's a guy called Tim Ferriss, who's now a huge podcaster. He's had Kobe Bryant on, the basketball player. He's had Arnold Schwarzenegger on.
Really, yeah.
And he purposely set up the podcast in 2014 so that it was anonymous, so people wouldn't see what he looked like. Now, 10 years later, that podcast's got big, and he's like, I'm now not famous, quote unquote. Yeah. He's not like Leonardo DiCaprio or a Schwarzenegger. Yeah. But he goes into a co-working space in New York, and most tech founders will know who he is, right? And he was like, it's fucking hideous. All I wanted to do was do a podcast.
Yeah.
And now I've got all this collateral damage, as you so said, to go along with it. It's almost like fame's this thing people look for or crave to have. And I think it's like Icarus who flies too close to the sun. When you actually get it, you're like, it's not what it's all made up.
No, you're absolutely right, Dan. It's I was up in Edinburgh on Sunday there, and I was walking up. It's the Fringe, you know, so it's really busy. There's lots of stuff going on, you know, and it's going through the crowd and things. And somebody shouted my name and just grabbed my jacket, you know. You think, what is that about? What is that they want to click? It's really, it's weird. So that's just a tiny little thing. Imagine, I remember when we were doing Braveheart, Ethan, who you know, he was a baby in a pram, and we were staying out in this little village called Killiney, and we just outside Dublin, and we walked down from our apartment into the village. It's a beautiful village, and we were just taking the little one for a walk and some fresh air, and then we were going to get something to eat. And Mel Gibson pulled up, and his driver pulled up outside this restaurant, and we just said hi like that, and we walked on, and he went in to the hotel with his wife. And by the time we turned round at the short street and came back, there was a crowd of maybe 50, 80 people standing outside the restaurant looking in the window. And he came out. He'd only been in there 10 minutes. He came out with his wife and get in the car, and they drove off. You know, like, what kind of life is that? No wonder they buy ranches.
It's hideous.
1,000 miles from anywhere.
But to then play the counter side to that, I remember I was working in a PR agency as an intern when I was like 21, so almost 10 years ago now. And I was so bored. I was like, fuck, let's just go have a cigarette breaks. It's probably the best cigarette break I've ever had in my life. And I went outside and I saw this small, diminutive kind of man, not diminutive, just a short kind of guy in all black. Anyway, he turns around, it's Ricky Gervais, right? And The Office is my favourite programme of all time. I genuinely thought it was fine for me. He got in the black cab was darting off. I genuinely thought it was okay for me to run down the cab, knock on the window, tell him I love The Office and ask for a picture. I was thinking, I went into the office, I think people must have just thought I'd had like the best shag of my life or something, because I was walking around the office like, oh my God, I'm buzzing. And they're like, oh, what happened? I was like, oh, I just had a picture of Ricky Gervais. But it's like, the other side of the coin is the obsession with celebrity. And we know these people, we think we know these people more than we actually do.
Yeah.
Even though we've never met them.
Yeah.
It's such a weird thing. It's like, I think I know Joe Rogan because I've listened to hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of Joe Rogan.
Yeah, as I have, yeah.
You know, like, and this is what they were saying in this podcast just says, it's like, you may spend 3 hours a week with Joe Rogan in your ears, but you may only see your mum or dad for 20 minutes a week.
Yeah.
It's quite a weird situation.
Yeah. And have a much more intellectually stimulating interaction with Joe Rogan than you would your mum and dad. Yeah.
It's mad. So you just to kind of go back. So you said you wanted to be an actor from day one.
Yeah.
And that's a really strong why, right? So I think if I'm right in saying I'd listened to somewhere that you were sat with your wife having a curry, and
well, Mel's cool.
Yeah. So I want to go back to the kind of those early maybe 10, 15 years of your career, right?
Yeah.
When you hadn't had that, and sorry if this is being kind of speculative, but that big shot, right?
Yeah.
How do you keep going in that period, or what are you saying to yourself?
That's the one of the core elements, Dan, is that for most actors, male or female, when they start, it's incredibly tough, especially nowadays. It's horrendous trying to get a job that pays anything, because there's so many people that just want to be in front of that camera. They will do anything, they'll work for free, they'll whatever. So it's very, very tough for everyone. And so I always thought that I would always work. I'm 75 now. I've never taken a penny from the government, not one fucking penny. Although I get a pension now, but I've paid huge amounts of tax, so I'm just getting a little bit back. But I never took any benefits because of my circumstance. I know a lot of people have to take benefits, but I didn't have to. I could go away and work, So I worked on the roads, which I really enjoyed. I like to say I built the Clydeside Expressway, not completely on my own, but I did help. So I worked at anything that could keep me going. But I never thought that as an actor. I never thought that I was giving up. That I'm not an actor. I'm a labourer, or I'm working in a bar or a restaurant or anything, bodyguard even, anything, to earn money, because as an actor, I was observing life just through a different lens. I was observing life through the lens of a labourer, of a barman or whatever, but I was still observing people. And one day I thought, I might use that. I might use something that has gone into my head subliminally about the way people behave. So observe. And so I never felt that I wasn't an actor. I was like an actor who was not acting at the moment, but still getting information about my job.
So you're almost being. It's almost that state of like, instead of like doing and thinking, you're almost like being. It's like Rick Rubin's talked about this is you're not, I am suddenly creative. You're a creative being. He talks about being creative. So whether you're doing the labouring job, or you're doing the bodyguarding job, is that all you can kind of use as fodder?
Yes,
pull into acting.
Absolutely. If you go to drama school and you spend 3 years there with kids the same age as you, well, you do learn. You learn a lot about the classics. You learn a lot about stagecraft, but you learn fuck all about life.
Are there any examples of some of those jobs that you've pulled into? I'm just got to follow my curiosity.
Oh, all the time.
Pulled into a role.
All the time. Characters that you play, and you think, where did that come from? And you might not be able to specifically identify that person or that trait or whatever, but you know that came from observation at some point. Yeah.
So just go back. I'm trying to like plot out the steps leading up to this Mel Gibson call, which then gave you the break in Braveheart. So you said you were a bouncer, a bodyguard, labourer.
Dozens of jobs. Yeah.
Did you ever have a moment when you thought sort of, fuck this, is it going to work out? And the reason I ask that is people listen to this podcast, they'll have a food and drink brand.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of success is just sticking in there. It's just all it is. It's like, if you just stick at something long enough, it's going to work. But did you ever have like a day of doubt, or how did you?
Yeah. When I talk to young actors that I'm working with or whatever, and I often, funnily enough, I use that word, stickability. You stick at it. You keep going. You wake up in the morning and you think, fucking, I'm just, I'm such a loser, honestly. I'm just getting nowhere. But you get up and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it, and you keep doing it. And eventually those walls start to crumble because the world, the universe realizes he's not giving up. He's just getting there. And it happens. It does happen. So many people get knocked back a dozen times. You should say, come on, bring it on. Knock me back a few more times. I'll fucking show you what I'm made of. And that's what makes the difference.
You can really bend reality to where you want it to be, but it's just...
The universe will conspire to make it happen. It will. I'm absolutely sure of that.
Providing you're willing to not give in. There's the quote I've talked about with the last couple of guests. It's gradually, then suddenly. I think it's Ernest Hemingway. The quote says, gradually, 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 your career, you're doing the labouring, you're doing the jobs, you're doing the odd job here and there. Gradually, gradually, suddenly the Mel Gibson phone call, right?
Yeah.
So
people think it was a Mel Gibson phone call. It wasn't. It was all that stuff I'd done before.
Yeah, exactly.
It triggered that thing that happened.
But you need those little consequential things.
You've got to. Yeah.
I have that with this podcast. I'm just thinking, just each day one new person. That's all I'm going for.
Yeah.
If I get one new person in and they like it, they'll tell their friends. Just keep doing that.
Absolutely.
And I think that's reassuring for people listening. But so what were some of those early roles? And like, were you making money? Were you... Yeah, was it hand to mouth? Like, what was that? What did that feel like?
I was your age.
Yeah.
When I made money, what did I want to do with it? I wanted to spend it. I had a great time. I was in London when it was all happening. It was fantastic. So you were in that whole crowd of young actors doing different stuff, looking for different stuff. It was amazing.
Okay, and then Mel Gibson calls you.
Yeah, this is a few years later because I was in my early 40s.
So in your 30s to the 40s, what was that like? Was that...
I was doing, I was doing jobbing work. I did a series called Roughnecks we did 2 seasons of that, about the oil rig, the early days of the oil rig workers in the North Sea, which was really enjoyable. I was building a career. I was becoming known as a good sort of go-to actor for certain types of specific sort of roles, sort of hard-nosed sort of stuff. So I was doing okay, but when Ethan was born, Annie, my wife, she went straight back to work at the BBC because we'd just a little 1-bedroom flat in Twickenham, and I hadn't been working, and so she was the breadwinner for us, which was lovely. I was looking after my son. It was great. It was like 6 months just looking after your baby. It was fantastic. Yeah, I wouldn't give that up for anything.
And at the beginning, you said all I wanted to be was an actor, not a movie star.
Yeah.
And you were, I suppose, acting. You were doing acting roles, like that role at the BBC. You were, I suppose, as you said, in a small flat in Twickenham. Were you happy at that stage?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It was challenging at times, but not as challenging as a lot of people have their lives. Anything but, I was very healthy. My family were healthy. I had nothing to complain about, and I didn't. I felt myself very privileged. It was a good time. I was very happy at that time.
Yeah, I think I've
always been happy with less than more.
There's a delicious lesson in that for listeners, and it's if you fall in love with the process, you ultimately win, right? Because you loved acting, whether that was acting on a small stage or acting in bloody Braveheart or acting in Game of Thrones. Yeah, you loved acting. So even though, whereas so many people will go into something thinking, well, I need to be in the next fucking Harry Potter, or I need that external goal.
It's just not.
And it's the same with food and drink brands. It's like people like, I want that big exit, I want that listing, I want that to sell that business for loads of money, which is fine. Mm-hmm. But if you go into it thinking that, then you're fucked because it's going to get tough. Yeah. And if you don't love the process, if you're not waking up every day, as you say, when the when you love it so much that the nose don't just bounce off you like water.
Yeah.
It's very easy to stick at it, right?
Yeah.
And then, ironically, that's when the big break comes, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so interesting. So then, for listeners, just describe the call for Braveheart, 'cause I think that's really...
Well, I love curry.
Same. What's your go-to?
I love food. I like prawn dansak. I love the lengthy sort of the
Sweet and sour.
Yeah,
It's such a good dish.
Yeah.
I've never had prawn though.
Yeah. King prawn dansak is really nice, and chicken is like, and I love lamb. I've got some Indian friends of mine, Bav and Paminda, and Paminda cooks a lamb, slow cooked lamb. Dear God, it's just fantastic. But she won't. She says, "Oh, come round. I'll show you the recipe. I'll do it." She never does. She never will. It's her secret, and that's cool. That's fine with me as long as she makes it for me. But yeah. Anyway, I love curry. We love curry. And I was at work living off what Annie could earn, which was fine. But we had a futon that me, Annie, and the baby slept in one room, and then in the other room, we had a rocking chair that Annie's mum lent us and a TV, and that was about it. But the treat of the week was a curry on Saturday night, and in those days, like they would show a late night film starting at 11 or something, I suppose, to catch people coming back from the pub. And so I'd ordered in the curry, and it came, and I sat down. There was some film I wanted to watch. I always remember it's 20 to 11, you know, and I'm got it all. I've got the tray on my lap and all that, and the baby's fast asleep in the bed and all that, and Annie's at school. So the phone rings. Fuck's sake. The film's just about to start, and the curry's in my lap. I said to her, "Look, that'll be my pal Dominic. He'll be in the pub pissed, and he said, will come over for a pint." I said, "Just tell him I'll see him tomorrow at lunchtime in the Old Anchor, and you know, I want to eat my curry." She said, "Yeah, of course." So she lifted the phone. She says, "Hello." "Oh yeah. Just hang on." She said, "It's Mel Gibson." Yep. "What?" Yeah, she went in, and was a little kitchenette, and she went into the kitchenette and shut the door. What was up? I lifted up, and I was sure it was Dominic. And I said, "Hello?" And this voice said, "Hey, Jimmy, it's Mel." I went, "Mel?" And he went, "Yeah, Mel Gibson." I went, "Oh, fuck, it really is Mel Gibson." Because I'd met him about 6 months before in a general meeting, we call it, where you just meet people in these
General meetings.
He was thinking he might be making a film in the UK, wanted to meet some British actors, da-di-da. That was all. I was just spent 5 minutes with him.
Right. And that's a common thing in the industry.
Yeah, it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And anyway, he just said, "I've been watching your show reel, and do you want to play Campbell?" And I said, "Go, man, I'd love to." And he said, "Great." He said, "I'm flying over tomorrow. See if when I land, when I get it." And that was it. Boom. There you go. That changed everything. Yeah.
So what does it feel like as you sit there on the sofa and you tuck into your prawn dansak?
Oh,
What's that feeling inside?
I don't know if it was a prawn dancer.
Oh yeah,
Probably a chicken madras or something at that time. I always remember I looked out and the moon was there, and I thought, what time is it? And I looked, found a clock, 20 to 11. So this changes everything, I guess. It was amazing.
I love that. It's just a great story, and just it's that gradually then suddenly, gradually then suddenly, gradually then suddenly.
Yeah.
And
I'll tell you another instance when I was doing Jack Ryan.
it's just to sit.
Yes.
Yeah.
When I was doing Jack Ryan.
Was that a recent one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a huge show for Amazon. I think it's the biggest, most expensive show, in fact. And my agent phoned me. I was sitting out there. My agent phoned me, and she said, "I've just had a phone call from the States." I said, "Okay. What is it, Olivia?" And she said, "It's from Jack Ryan, the producers of Jack Ryan." I went, "Uh-huh." Now, to explain, when you do a big series like that, if you're not a big name, you go through a process of, so you've got all the different boxes to tick. You've got not so much the directors in America, but the producers, the production company, the network, you've got to tick all these boxes. And there's other people that are doing the same thing for the same part, and it gets narrowed down, and then maybe there's just 3 of you or 2 of you, and they decide. She said, it's a straight offer. It's a completely straight offer. I went, wow, really? She said, yeah, it's a huge part. She said, I just don't understand it. She said, but anyway, she said, the producers want you, the network wants you, and most importantly, John Krasinski wants you. I said, who's John Krasinski? He said, he's the guy, he's the guy that's playing Jack Ryan, The Office. I said, I've never seen The Office, the American Office. Anyway, flash forward, the first time I was in Budapest, first time I was working with John and Krasinski, and John came up and we were talking away. He said, do you know why we asked you to do this? I said, I'd love to know. I said, no idea. Yeah. He said, my wife and I, what's her name, Emily Blunt, were sitting reading the scripts, there's 8 episodes, reading the scripts for this season. And we just finished the 8th script, and John said, so who do we get to play Luka Gocherov, this Russian master spy? And he said, Emily just said instantly, James Cosmo. And he said, yeah, you're right. I've never met Emily Blunt in my life. Never met John Krasinski in my life. Don't know anything about it. How does that happen? It happens from gradually. And they just flick the switch, and that's all.
So for people who are listening to this, who are on a walk or a run, and they've either got a brand, we now have listeners that are not just food and drink. It's people who are hungry, who want to do good things.
Yeah.
Who are struggling, who are thinking, fuck this. Like, what's one piece of wisdom you could give to them with everything you know?
If you believe in your heart that you're doing something worthwhile and that enhances your life and other people's lives, then if you know that you have a moral and ethical goal to do something, then do it, and do it fearlessly with courage, and know that the universe will conspire to make that happen. Because, it's like the ant at the dam. What, you think I can't? Well, you haven't met me yet. Really, it just takes that. Because that attitude, we all emote who we are inside. And if you have a real belief in something, I'm sure you've met people, you think, God, this person really is, they're on a mission to do something. They're impressive. This guy is impressive. This woman is impressive. And what they do, we emanate things. And if you have that in your mind, and you know that you're coming from a decent moral and ethical place, and that you want success, and that success is going to reverberate through your family, your employees, all those people, I think the universe will conspire. God will conspire to help you. And no amount of hindrance and barriers will be able to stop you, because you will do it.
It's linking this to the brand that's in front of me, Story Man. It's like every man has a story they tell themselves. And if the story you tell them yourself is one, not necessarily of like positivity where you're walking around buzzing your tits on the whole time, that's just not life, right? But the story you tell yourself of, I can achieve something greater than, and I've just got to keep going.
Absolutely. And, I'm a great admirer of Quakers. The most...
Quakers, sorry.
The Quakers, the Society of Friends.
Okay, yeah.
They're remarkable people, hugely unsung to a great extent. They're still a lot of them around, but Cadbury and Fry and Rowntree and all those people, they were all Quakers. And the one thing that they brought to their business was that, I remember reading somewhere that you would be hard-pressed to know the difference between the man who owned the company and the man who worked for the company. Because the man who owned the company was not concerned with a wonderful carriage to drive in and beautiful horses and elegant clothes. He was interested in building a business that benefited him, his family, his employees, and the greater society. And those people took people that had been working in horrible cotton mills and dreadful positions. They built the Cadbury village. The people
Cadbury chocolate is
Yeah.
And round tree sweets.
Absolutely. Those people, all Quakers. And they built new housing for their workers. They educated their children. They had a huge and profound impact on society. Housing for the dispossessed and the poor people in the East End of London, all Quakers. But they were terrific businessmen, but they had a moral and ethical purpose to what they were doing.
Yeah, it's mad how there has to be this bigger why. And as I said to you before we hit the record button, James, is for Challenger Food and Drink brand founders, watch Braveheart. Like, there's a lot of lessons in that as being a founder. It's almost like William Wallace and the founder's journey are like intertwined. You've got the Scottish, almost like the Challenger brands. They're the David. You've got the English, who are the Goliath, who in our language is sort of the Mars, the PepsiCo, the Unilever. Will Wallace has a strong why. Obviously, his wife gets murdered by the English. He has that big fucking fire burning in it, burning in his soul. I think a lot of founders have that. They've got to have that relentless fire in their soul.
Of course you do.
There's that famous scene which I love when he rallies the troops together. You know that
What, he's on horseback?
Yeah, he's on a horseback.
Oh, that's
to me, that's one of the best.
Yeah.
If anyone watch, I'll put it in the show notes. Watch 4 minutes out on YouTube. That will get you out of bed.
Yeah.
But that is just insane. So, but that's leading, mobilizing people. People listening to this have to get teams together. They have to convince supermarkets to take a punt on them. There's so much in that.
Yeah.
And then there's that bit, and I think it's when you're trying to go into the, I think it's the castle in York, when you're like a shield and you're battering down that.
Oh, yeah.
That is the founder's journey. Every day is, I genuinely believe you're getting up. I've got this with this podcast, so many of my friends with brands. You're running at a brick wall. Yeah. No one's there to support you. You just need to just keep going. And I think it's such a good film for brands to watch, actually, and to get them to keep going. But what I want to talk about is how you prepare for a role, right? So, because it was Campbell, the role, right?
Yeah.
How did you prepare for that? Because people see a smidge, right? They see. I saw the film. It's a 3-hour film.
Yeah.
What's the prep? What do you do in the run up to that first day on set?
Well, I mean, some actors like to sort of deeply immerse themselves as Daniel Day-Lewis method actors or whatever, to deeply immerse themselves in the role. That's not me. I think for me it's a more subliminal process. You read the script a few times, you start, and sort of subliminally, and maybe when you're lying in bed falling asleep, you think of, imagine that character. What was he like? What sort of life did he lead? You know, how did he regard living? What value did he have on life, on other people's lives, on his life? How desperately would he cling on to that? Or would he not? Were those people very different? All those questions that you ask yourself. And then you have the physical side of it. You know, I can ride horses pretty good anyway, but, you know, going out and riding horses all day and rehearsing fight scenes, it gives you a sort of physical manifestation of what they were like, you know. So that all blends into one, you know, and then you have your first day on the set and you're like a jelly. You're so nervous, but that passes really quickly. And then you just get into the core of the work.
When you say method acting, so that's almost like Heath Ledger in The Joker, isn't it? So
yeah, that's right. It all came from Stanislavski, you know.
What are you actually doing? So you're literally walking around like today, pretending you're the fucking Joker.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I remember Brendan Gleeson. I said, "What was it like to work with Daniel Day-Lewis on Gangs of New York?" And he said, "Well, he had Eminem in his earphones, and he used to sit outside his Winnebago sharpening knives all fucking day. You know, so it's like, oh, really? Well, just sitting Daniel alone just now, you know.
Was there on set? They are the actor. They are.
Yeah. I mean, when he did My Left Foot, you know, he spent all his time in a wheelchair and having to get carried to the wheelchair and things. That was, you know. But if that's how you, and he's a magnificent actor, if that's how you want to approach it and do it, what works for him, it sure does. You know, he's one of the finest actors ever. So that's great.
There's a lot of empathy, I think. What I'm so excited about this conversation, right, is I've interviewed so many founders in food and drink, right, and I know kind of it's hard, but I kind of know the roadmap to build a great brand. I've had 100 conversations, but I've never had a conversation like this. But I almost think there's a lot of empathy. What you've said there, you're like almost thinking about how X character would think in this situation, how they respond to that. Would they let go of that? It's like there's a lot of empathy in that, and I think that is such a vital skill in everything for our listeners in terms of being able to see what that other person's feeling, thinking, and you can almost apply that to leadership. So
yeah.
So you go on the first day on set, and just out of curiosity, and like, how long would it take to? I hear stories where like on set is like relentlessly tough and working conditions. It's relentless. It's repetitive. Like, what does it say? That fighting scene, that infamous fighting scene.
Yeah.
How long does that take to film?
Oh, we spent on specifics. You have to remember that the battle scenes that we filmed in Ireland, they had about 8 hours of battle scenes, just fights that they cut down and cut down and cut down and got the best bit. So we spent half of the film doing just battle scenes, just fighting. So it was, you know, it was physically, it was hell. You know, you're riding about on a horse, you're throwing a sword around, you're having these. What's wrong with that? You know, so you're tired at night. Yeah, big deal. You know, for people that say it's very arduous, they've never been down a fucking coal mine.
Yeah. So again,
that's arduous because my grandfather was a coal miner, and my uncles were all coal miners. So swings and roundabouts, but believe me, acting of any kind ain't as tough as that.
Yeah. There's a quote from Danny Boyle, and we'll get on to Danny Boyle, but for listeners, he's the director of Trainspotting, Slumdog Millionaire. I think did a few other amazing films as well. But he's got a quote, and it says, "To be a filmmaker, you have to lead. You have to be psychotic in your desire to do something. People always like the easy route. You have to push very hard to get something unusual, something different." Again, linking this back to food and drink founders, is a lot of our guests are founders. Guests are founders, but they're having to be that sort of relentless psychopath, that person who just believes in themselves. What are some of the leadership lessons you picked up from Mel Gibson as when he was directing that you think could help listeners?
Because he would always go the extra mile. You know, if things were tough, he would be the first one there doing it. You know, if everyone was exhausted at the end of the day, he was the one that was saying, right, we're going to do this scene because we need to do it. It's going to be a fantastic scene. Everybody up, let's go. He was the one that was in front, you know.
Really?
And like that famous book says, you know, the leader eats last. He made sure everyone was okay and up for it before he fed himself. That was not literally. Yeah. He was very much follow me and it's going to be great.
That's so interesting. So it's almost like in real life.
Yeah.
William Wallace, when he's saying, "Oh yeah, me," it's like he was actually doing that.
He was very much the same. Very much the same.
Is there anything else? Anything you didn't? I asked this to a guest the other week, whose business partner is Gordon Ramsay, actually.
Oh yeah.
And I love speaking to people who are formidable, who've hung out with formidable people. It's just interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you didn't expect to learn from Mel Gibson that kind of took you by surprise? Maybe something subtle or something.
I think actually Mel is quite a shy person. And just through circumstance and through his profession and what he loves doing, he has to be gregarious and be out there and enthusiastic. But I think he's obviously, should I say introverted? Not shy, but introverted, and he's a deeply religious man, which is absolutely fine with me. But I didn't realise how much his faith impacted on his everyday life, and his generosity is extraordinary. Generosity not only in not gifts, but he was generous with his time to lots and lots of people. He would always have time to talk to actors, to discuss what they were doing. That was never out of the question. It was always, if you said Mel, he was always there. And I remember we were doing my death scene, and he came up and he said, it was just after lunch, we were going to shoot it, so the afternoon, and he said, Jimmy said, do you know the cheapest thing on this set? And I said, I've got no idea. What do you mean? He went, it's the film in the camera. He said, use as much as you like. Just do it. Just go for it. And that was, psychologically, that was really smart, because it took the heat, the nerves out of it. And I knew that I could have this great big film crew all standing around, and I could shoot that scene. I could just keep saying, I'd like to do another one. I'd like to do another. I could do that for the next 6 hours.
Right.
And of course, the heat was off, and we did it in an hour. It was all done.
Yeah, I don't
really good psychological.
Yeah.
Not a trick, but it was psychological support.
It's changing. Yeah, it's changing the frame. Like, I remember I used to work for a brand, and again, kind of playing this sort of food and drink lens, and I used to get super nervous going to speak to like the big retailers. Uh-huh. And someone said to me, it's like, don't forget that, like, it's quite crass, right? It's like, don't forget that buyer's probably taken a shit in the last 4 hours.
Yeah.
And it just was like, oh yeah, I'm just speaking to a human being. Yeah. But that's a great lesson in leadership. Yeah. So how many...
And as we were saying about Noah Harari or whatever that wrote Savages, everything is always, these brands are a story. It's just someone else he's acting out his thing that he believes in, and you're doing your thing. Nothing is, that brick wall isn't really a brick wall. It's just your perception.
Yeah, I can apply that to my life now. I'm trying to get more like revenue from the podcast. I've got this like mental block. And I think what I'm learning from you, James, is just kind of fucking smash through it.
Yeah.
I want to just out of curiosity here. So is it a common thing that actors get really nervous on set? Is that why would you guys get nervous? Is that just because you're basically doing?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be nervous. You have to. What? If you find yourself going onto a set and being the coolest guy there, now you might look the coolest guy there, but inside you are thinking, oh, I really hope I don't fuck this up. I really do. And I hope I remember the lines, and I've got the cat, all those things. But you have to have that, because as soon as you walk onto the set, and it's the same with being on stage, you're nervous, and then they go, you're on, and it changes. And all that nervous energy becomes performance. You're working at 40% more than you are when you're normal, because that adrenaline, that excitement it's solidified into performance, into that character that you're playing. And you have to have that. If you go on set thinking, it's fine, this is easy, it's going to be a terrible performance. You're done.
I mean, I had the same thing of doing quite a bit of public speaking over the last year, and before I was terrified, and where I've kind of, if I'm not fucking shitting myself, what I'm actually worried, and I believe what you've said there is amazing for listeners. It was like,
if you're nervous, that's your extra 40%, mate.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
lean into that.
Absolutely.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But what would you be nervous about? Is that about letting the director down? Because as I always think, well, with a film, like they've got so many takes. Like,
Yeah, I know. You would think.
Yeah.
You would think.
Yeah.
You know, if someone said, look, you can do this a million times, but you need it. You need to be nervous. You know, you need to feel unsure of your footing, because that makes sure that your balance is really right. You know, that you're on song. I think it's just a natural thing of performance.
That's a great aphorism. Be unsure of your footing to make sure your balance is right. I love that, James. In terms of, let's go into Trainspotting. And we're going to go on to the list, so I'm really enjoying this. But I read somewhere in an article, I think it was in The Sun, and you said, I was privileged to be in Braveheart and Trainspotting. They were both very different movies and did very different things for Scotland. I don't think you can remember saying this.
Yeah, probably.
That doesn't make one better than the other, but Trainspotting was an amazing contrast from Braveheart and very refreshing too.
Yeah.
And I watched both films back to back. Trainspotting, I think they came out a year apart, maybe 2 years apart.
Yeah, could have done,
Yeah. And they both Scottish. I mean, I suppose Trainspotting pulls you into the dark underbelly of Scotland.
Yeah.
And Braveheart shows you the camaraderie of Scotland and almost the kind of the cheeky personality of Scotland, I would say, in so many ways. But I've been thinking about this, as you say, you've just been at Edinburgh Fringe. Scotland is synonymous with great storytelling. It just is. That you've got, as I said, Edinburgh Fringe, you've got Billy Connolly, the list of actors, you've got Sean Connery, Gerard Butler, Ewan McGregor, Robert Carlyle. Yeah. Robert Carlyle in Trainspotting. I mean, that's
fabulous.
Fabulous. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah,
that's
I know.
On site.
I know. He was so fantastic.
And that film made so many, like, that one film made so many young Scottish actors.
Oh, God, yeah.
But what, just to kind of unpack that, like, how did those films for you, what was the impact they had on Scotland as a storytelling nation, if that's how you want to...
Braveheart, I think, it was... I remember I was sitting in Neary's pub with Randall Wallace, the guy that wrote Braveheart. He'd been on holiday a few years before. He'd seen the Wallace Monument in Stirling. Who's that guy? What? Because it's the same name. He looked up, read the story and all that sort of stuff, which is sort of unclear. Nobody really knows much about William Wallace, except for the couple of battles and things. And he wrote this story. And I remember sitting with him in Neary's pub over a pint of Guinness, and I said, I think this is going to have a huge effect on Scotland. And before that, the Scottish Nationalist Party were peripheral. They weren't mainstream at all. And he disagreed with me. But it turned out I was right. I think Braveheart hit a chord within Scottish people that personally I'm not a nationalist. I think I'm a British nationalist. I'm very proud of how Scotland and England have been together this long time, and Scotland has had a huge impact on England, on British society, on the international, the Western world. We've had a completely out of proportion to our population. We've had a huge effect on the Western world. But that's by the by. But I think Braveheart was it was an international success, Dan, because the core tenet of the movie was about the little guys that said, no, we want freedom. We're not going to have this anymore. We're going to stand up and we're going to fight, and we're going to defeat this overwhelming, malevolent authority, because we believe that every man is free. Declaration of Arbroath, which was written hundreds of years before the Declaration of Independence, but is very similar in its Braveheart's main core was about freedom, was about individual freedom, which is the most important thing that any society can have. We must have individual freedom and self-autonomy, and not be ruled by a faceless government that does not have your well-being at its heart. It has the opposite at heart.
And that's why I think it's such a good film to watch for challenger brands, because as you rightly said there, James, it's the little guy fighting the big malevolent beast, right? And there's something in that. And then I suppose the flip side is, what do you think Trainspotting did for Scotland and storytelling? Because the amount of actors that came out of that thing was just...
Yeah. Well, Danny Boyle he's a complete one-off. He is an extraordinary talent for filmmaking. And as you mentioned there, when he was doing the unusual and the different, I mean, throughout his career, he's done that. I worked with him before Trainspotting on a play of the month called The Night Watch, about mercenaries in Amsterdam. And it was a joy to work with him then, and then so when he phoned me and said, "Do you want to play Ewan's dad in Trainspotting?" I just dived at it, because I've never worked with a director as talented as that.
Yep. What's different about...
Before or since?
What's different about Danny versus other directors?
I wish I knew. It's he inspires the whole crew. Every member of that crew really feels that they are valued, and their input has again value. They all want to contribute. They all want. I don't know how he does it, but he makes people, or he lets people know that they are part of a bigger project and that their contribution really matters. And that's down to the guy that brings the sandwiches in the afternoon, the guy that cleans out the Winnebagos. They all feel that they're part of a Danny Boyle film. It's extraordinary how he can do it, because it's not phony. It's not. It's far from being a device. He just has that love of what he's doing and the talent to know what he's doing, and people just feed off that and they believe in him because he believes in them.
Yeah, it's a great leadership lesson in terms of his creative process / storytelling kind of, not wheelhouse, but capabilities. Is that such a different film? And then, as he said, you've got to. What does he say? He says, what does he say? People always like the easy route. You have to push very hard to get something unusual. If we were to, rewind in a time machine to being on set in 1994, 1995, is there any examples of how what he was saying to push hard to get something unusual? Because one of my big tenets with this podcast is doing things differently. Mm-hmm. If you try and be like everyone else, you end up like everyone else. Whereas it's much easier to just do something so fucking different. If you're in a category of one, you win. It's much easier to win.
Absolutely.
It's much easier to win. I mean, that reason that film is such a cult following is amazing storytelling for sure, but also just because it was so fucking different.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go into that, would be brilliant.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you were sort of comparing it with food or the industry, if you have a big box of shiny apples, and some apples are a bit dry looking and not very nice, but there's some really big shiny apples, and they're fantastic. They look amazing, but they're still apples. But if there's a single kiwi fruit sitting on the counter. You go, what the fuck's that? Wow, look at that. That's completely different. Look, yeah, I know those are, and there's some nice apples there, and there's other ones. That's a nice shiny apple. But look at that. You know, there is, as you say, that being different is the thing. And I think people within the industry looked at Danny, and because of that enthusiasm they had, the belief in what he's doing and the product that he's going to make, that they saw that. They saw that this is different. This is a film that's not going to cost 100 million to make, at the end of the day, 50 million profit. You know, that's not what it is. It's a film that's going to cost 5 million, and it's going to make 500 million because it's different. With those shiny fruit, you could sort of work out maybe it'll make that, if it does, okay. But that different one, that's gonna be the one that's gonna go.
Wow. Yeah, I was thinking, reflecting on that. It's such a true lesson. I think everyone wants to be the shinier apple. Well, it's actually just easier to be the kiwi.
Yeah.
But it is.
Yeah, because you're sitting in a box with a lot of shiny.
Yeah. You know, so what's he taught you about storytelling? Because I think storytelling is, I'm going to come on to the storyman, it's a tenet for life, really.
Yeah,
It's a great life. You need great stories. What's he taught you about storytelling specifically?
It's funny because when Danny directs you, you don't realise you're being directed. You're sitting with a cup of tea and a fag or whatever, and you're talking about different things, and he's talking away in that accent is from Coventry or whatever, isn't he?
Yeah, he's Mancunian, isn't he? Yeah, got a problem with
And he's talking away about different things you can win. You go, he's very subtle in his direction. He's not in any way, do it this way. He gently nudges you into the position where you are going to bring out the best in yourself. That's what he wants. He wants you to bring out the best of what you can do. So he has to have faith in you as an actor. He has to know that there's more in you than you think there is. And he's the one that facilitates that. David Lean, who made Lawrence of Arabia and lots of other great films, he was a wonderful director, but he said, my prime objective is to make that actor comfortable in the part that he's playing and be happy on the set, because then I facilitate that performance.
And is there an example of how he did that on Trainspotting, either with you or Ewan McGregor? Or...
I think with Bobby Carlyle especially.
What is, yeah.
Bobby, I'm sure Bobby came and, Bobby's a Glasgow kid the same as me. He's met people like that, but I think Danny gave him the free reins to explore Begbie like that, and said, yeah, you go for it. You show me what you've got in your head, and it was magical. Yeah.
At the time, did you realise what a cult film you guys were making? Was there like a feeling?
Yeah.
Or
I think there was. It was such an ensemble piece, and with so many terrific young actors, like my buddy Kevin McKidd and Ewan Bremner, Bobby obviously, and Ewan McGregor. That ensemble was. You did feel that this was those kids obviously younger than me, but you thought these are the brightest and best that Scotland can produce, that Danny's chosen,
And so that film comes out, right? And what I'd love to go into, and I'd like to ask potentially like difficult questions. So you're in the driving seat, tell me to fuck off and I will. But like what have been some of the really dark days? Because that film paints a really dark picture, not a dark picture, but like it's almost as much as it's awe-inspiring, it's disturbing. And it paints a picture. It's a picture of Glasgow.
Yeah.
What were some of the really...
Or Edinburgh, yeah.
Edinburgh, sorry. I'd get killed if I said that. What were some of the really dark days of you growing up in Glasgow? Like, what were some of the maybe the hardest day you've had to go through?
In Glasgow?
Well, just like in your career, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was really sort of out of Glasgow. In my sort of late teenage years, I didn't really go back that much. But when we were doing Trainspotting, which was actually shot in Glasgow, most of it, a lot of the interiors were shot in Glasgow. But Glasgow's a very interesting city. No Mean City, as the book calls it.
No, what's it called?
No Mean City. It was a famous book written in the 30s about the razor gangs in Glasgow, which was...
What was razor gangs?
Oh, razor! They used to fight with open razors.
Fucking hell, yeah.
Slash each other. It has a terrible history of violence. It was, and to a certain extent, still is a very violent city. I don't, one could say it's because of the social deprivation or whatever. I'm not sure about that. I don't know. I think a lot of very fine people came through exactly the same circumstances and made a huge difference to the world. But no matter what, it's always been a very violent city. And it has as all of Scotland, it has the most horrendous problem with Class A drugs. Just horrendous. It's per capita, it's 3 times the number of England. When you cross that border, it's 3 times more people addicted to Class A drugs in Scotland. It's unbelievable. And
why do you think that is?
I've no idea. No idea, Dan. I don't know. Maybe it's... is there a darkness in the Scottish soul? A sort of... I don't know. I don't know. Maybe people just give up eventually. And, and it's a generational thing. If you have 2 generations of people that have been unemployed and living on benefits and taking drugs to ease the psychological wilderness that they're in. If you have more than 2 generations of that, what hope of children got? They don't have any hope. What are you going to do when you grow up? Well, I'll be a drug addict. That's what you'll be, and that's really awful. I wish I knew how to.
It's a lack of purpose. So. Well, no, look, I'm not. Who am I to say here? Like, I went to fucking good school, right? Like, I'm not even anywhere near it. But what Ivan Walsh says, and as I say in the podcast I watched before our conversation, is he says people think Trainspotting is a book about drugs. It's not. It's a book about kids having no purpose, and when you have no purpose, you have. I think the other side of purpose is hope. They're like the same thing, right? Yeah. When you have no purpose and no hope, you need something to fill the void. And when you're in the, as you say, the psychological or mental wilderness, the one that kind of takes you out that wilderness into something else, into a safer place, is fucking heroin or drugs. And it's just how you see. Well, what you said there is, does Scotland have a darkness to its soul? Like, I find that really interesting. But how do you solve that problem? So you go over that border and it's 3 times worse. It's like...
Yeah. I'm sure if there was an answer, someone would have identified it, but I can't see it, I did a charity thing when I was up there filming this thing called Night Sleeper, and it's called A Magic Breakfast, and it's a charity that try to make sure that every junior school child in Scotland gets something to eat in the morning. And where I was at Sighthill School, wonderful head teacher, a lady, she was very inspiring, but over 90% of the children that went to our school were socially deprived. And she said when they've had their lunch at school, a lot of them, that's the last meal they have until they get their breakfast in the morning, which is a bagel and Marmite. That's it. And then they have lunch, and then they probably don't get anything in it. I mean, in the 21st century, in Britain,
Yeah.
over 90% in that school. Jeez.
What were those dark days for you then, or what's been those dark days, or maybe the equivalent of?
Dark days. I haven't had that many dark days, or at least the dark days. I'll put them in the fucking dustbin. That's done. That's, you know, we all have dark days. The worst day I had was when I was working in Arnott Young's, the shipbreakers, when I was 16, and I was working in the brass shop. It was Dickensian. It really was Dickensian. It was black and grey. It was the middle of winter, and it was like a Lowry painting. We're all, you know, walking through the rain and into the factory. They give you a little brass tab with a number on it, and they'd write the number in the book, you know, a fucking quill pen. I was fucking write it down. And then you go in and you do I was burning oxyacetylene stuff and getting the brass off these ships. And yeah, I sort of decided that this wasn't my life path that I wanted to be on. But those were pretty depressing sort of days, you know. But some of those guys had been there since the war. They'd been working in these horrendous conditions. Jeez, I'm so privileged to get out of it, you know.
Every guest I speak to has some kind of superpower. I think it's you have an ability to reframe your situation as it could always be worse. Even when you're living in the flat in Twickenham, they could always be worse. And I think
nobody's dropping a fucking bomb on me.
Yeah,
that's a start anyway.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
There's nobody trying to cut my head off. I might, you know, I've been hungry, but I've never starved. Starvation is a different thing. Hunger is a great thing because it makes you want food. And when you get that food, you're really going to enjoy it no matter what it is. It's going to be really nice. I remember when I was a youngster, I was sleeping on somebody's couch, and I just did, the BBC used to rehearse at North Acton. They had a sort of, not a tower block, but a 7-story thing. And those were the rehearsal rooms, but they had a canteen on the top. And I remember had to be there for 10 days rehearsal, and then we recorded the show. And I'd worked out that I had enough money that I could buy 2 eggs on toast in the canteen in the morning, and then get something at night to eat. And that I could survive, and then I'd get paid, and I'd be okay. But I tell you, those fried eggs and toast, I used to walk to North Acton to save the tube fare, which was fine. It was in the summer, it was lovely. But those eggs and toast tasted just fantastic, you know. It's all relative, isn't it?
It's all about enjoying. It's about enjoying I've got a friend who Ethan knows as well, actually, who's got so much money, right? But he's so used to going to a fucking banging restaurant every day of the week. It's like you could go to Gordon Ramsay's restaurant tomorrow, and it's like, to him, it's like eating McDonald's. It's like there's no. You get so accustomed to that. It's so strange. It's just like you got that. There's no. It's almost the complete opposite of abject poverty, in that, like, when those kids who can't afford a school meal. Obviously you'd much rather be in a situation. There's no. I'm not saying. But I'm saying there's when you have access to such easy things.
Yeah.
When it's not hard, when you're not hungry, the food doesn't taste as good,
of course
right?
It doesn't. No.
So it's like this guy, I won't say it is.
So you've got to go further and further.
He's got to go further. Now going away on holiday all the time. Yeah. He's like constantly searching for that thing, but like that, there's a constant void there of, you know, he could go and eat at every single restaurant every day of the week in London. It just loses its.
Yeah. And what a huge loss that is. You know, it's like being, not that I've ever had it, and never will, but having limitless amounts of money to spend. Think of what you've lost. What? Nothing is value. What, nothing? No, I can take that bottle of whiskey, I can throw it out through that window and go, fuck off. And somebody will come and repair the window, give me more whiskey, pay off the neighbours. That doesn't mean anything. It's awful to have that. You've lost so much, you know, of the value of stuff, the value of of hard-earned money that you really know you've earned. Like I remember when I was labouring on the Clydeside Expressway, I had a ganger. That's the guy that looks after it.
So how old were you when you were doing the labouring?
I was about 17. Early
Right, okay,
17.
yeah. And you were acting on the side here?
No, I hadn't started then.
Right, okay.
And this ganger, he was called Paddy. He was an old Irish guy from Donegal. And when you're labouring, you have a week's lying time, which means you don't get paid the first week, you get paid the second week. So when you leave, you get your lying time. So you get double wages when you leave. So the wages came round, didn't get it on the first Thursday. Second Thursday, my wage packet came, and the foreman came round, he had a little box with a little brown envelope like that with your name on it, you know. And he said, there you are, that's the thanks, like that. And Paddy took his money and he said, Jimmy, he said, why do you thank him? I don't know. And the thing was that I knew I'd earned that money. Paddy knew I'd earned that money because my back was sore and his back was sore. So why do you thank someone if they pay you for what you've provided? You don't have to give thanks. Just say that's our deal done. You give me the money and that's it. Yeah, I always remember that. But that money had real value to me, you know, as I say, because my back was sore and lots of other benefits. I used to sleep great at night, used to eat huge meals and didn't make any difference to me. I was as fit as a fiddle. But I know that that is not comparable to someone who has an awful lot of money. But the level of happiness that provided me was extraordinary. And if you have lots of money, you've been denied that happiness, that effort. Money equates to effort. It should do.
Money equates to effort. Yeah, this guy doesn't have to work necessarily. So there's no purpose equals lack of hope equals depression, right? So whether that's in whether you've got fucking loads of money, right? Or whether that's when you're trying to fill that void with as they did in Trainspotting. Yeah. That's a whole book about
it's exactly the same
purpose,
as you were saying.
Yeah.
Whereas
if you've got loads of money.
If you're in that wilderness, you're in that same wilderness.
Yeah.
There's nothing to aim for. Why? Why? Some people, there's nothing to aim for because they don't have the education or the circumstance that they can aim at anything. My mum and dad and his mum and dad, they were all, on heroin or whatever. What the fuck else am I going to do? That's you there. And the rich kid, well, I've got everything. Well, why do anything? Why do anything?
It's the same depression.
Of course it is. And you end up in the same place. How many rich kids have been shooting up, find something? Oh, this is different. Somebody in the Gorbals of Glasgow. Oh, this is different. Take me away from the real world. It's a very dubious gift is unearned money.
It's so what, and we don't have to go into specifics, but when did you start to make money off acting? Or you had this gradually then sadly, gradually it's the not Mel Gibson, sorry. Braveheart kicks off, it's a rip-roaring success. Yeah. Then you get Trainspotting. Do you suddenly go into a load of money then, or what's the trajectory? I'm just out.
Yeah, I mean, it all changed, Dan, because it's just an equation, like, oh, you've done this, you've done that, so your card, as they call it, suddenly goes, whoop.
Your card, is that almost like your...
It's a thing, somebody phones you up, phones your agent up and says, we'd like James Cosmo to do this, and she goes through their Rolodex or whatever, I'll look in the computer, just look at my card, right? For an equivalent film, he was making, I don't know, 150,000 for that. So for that, it's slightly bigger. So
is that what you got for Braveheart?
No, nowhere near. A lot less than that. But so that's your card. But if you do something big, you suddenly go boom, onto the next level, and then you maintain that for a while, and you do something, boom, up you go, and it works that way.
And your relationship, so we're talking about money's only good when it's hard earned, right? Yeah. How did that change you? How did money change you? Did it change you?
I've always had an unhealthy disregard for money. doesn't.
An unhealthy or healthy?
Well,
It's probably slow.
some people would think it unhealthy because I'm not acquisitive. I never have been. I live in a nice house and things, but I wouldn't know how much money I've got. I've got no idea. No idea. My wife would know, but I have no idea. I'm not interested. I find it very hard to be interested in just money. Like, can I look at that bank account or a pension or whatever invest? I don't know, and I don't care. I really can't be asked to be bothered about that.
It goes.
So I've got enough money to go away fly fishing or I don't eat. We don't eat out very often, but if I want to eat out, I can eat out. But no, it doesn't ring my bell. It doesn't ring my bell.
It's
Achievement rings my bell, not money.
achievement rings my bell, not money. Yeah, and I realised that with this podcast is I've been very clear from the outset that I want to make money off this, right?
Yes.
As much as money does not get me out of bed in the morning, but
No.
I know exactly what I mean. I made fuck all from this thing for years, and no one listened. So it's not. I've got the purpose. It's a bit like you. I love acting.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
doing this.
Yeah.
I love the process of doing this.
Yeah.
I would do this for free, right?
Right.
But then when I started making a bit of money, I was like, okay, well that's interesting. Like, then I want to go here, and then I was like, do I actually need that much money, or am I just? Anyway, so I got talking to a friend, and I was written about this in my newsletter, which I'll put a link in the show notes. All about what's the that's enough goal, and it's like it's way less money than you think. Like, people can live really good off not that much money.
Yeah.
The issue is people think money fills that void. They think the more money, the more it fills up, the more that void's filled. That it's not necessary.
Yeah.
And I think for people who've been listening to this, it's just that go back to what is the process goal? What's the thing you can keep doing and enjoying?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the story.
Well, you need to climb that mountain and understand that it's the climbing of the mountain. That in itself is the reward, because when you get to the top of the mountain, there isn't anything there. There isn't anything there. It was a journey.
It's not even cliche, but it's quite a cliche. But so many. I've sat here with founders who've built some huge brands. They all say the same thing. So many people said the day I sold the business was the most depressing day of my life, because they lost the process. They lost the purpose. No purpose equals hope. Hopelessness equals depression.
Yeah.
Whether that's you've got loads of money or you're fucking skint in Glasgow, right?
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
same mental wilderness.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the story whiskey.
Yeah.
So what's the genesis of this?
Okay. So when you're doing films and things, when you're doing films, it's a sort of tradition that you give people presents, and you usually go around, like, maybe there's 6 cast members. Do I buy what? Go down to Waterstones, wander around, buy. Maybe they're like that. I don't know. So it's annoying, and I thought, I'd like, like just a whiskey that you couldn't buy, but it was like my whiskey, that I could give to friends and people that I've worked with. So my business partner, the Sandy Pancioli, he's a pilot at British Airways. Well, sitting in he's an Indian guy, and I said, I was talking about that, and I'd been, I did a film. I was briefly in a film called The Outlaw King with Chris Pine and David Mackenzie directing it. Terrific, wonderful director. Another wonderful director, Scottish, very hugely talented guy. Anyway, they had an idea to bring out a Outlaw King whiskey, and they approached this. I like to call it a boutique distillery in Dumfries. It's independently owned. It's either Diageo or Santoria own everything, But this is owned by a guy called David Thompson and his wife, Professor Thompson. And it's their baby, as they say. Anyway, they had this whiskey that they're going to do, and they asked me to come up as one of the people that was in it and promote it. So I went up and we got a cask, and I met David and his wife and all the folk there. And they were lovely. It's a lovely location and a beautiful distillery, twin stills. David had poured millions into getting it just right. He's a real aficionado. He just loves the whole world of whiskey and poetry and music and all. He's lovely. He's very dedicated to the whole thing. Anyway, I met them and we promoted Outlooking. And then I think it was a copyright thing that had slipped through the net. They couldn't produce the whiskey. So that was that, gone, Outlooking. So a couple of years later, I'm talking with Andy. It was just near New Year. And I was telling him, I'd like to do something like that. He said, well, I'll why don't you distillery? I said, yeah, Annandale. He went, I'll give him a ring. So it was.
What year was this?
3 years ago.
3 years ago. Cool.
He said, I'll give him a ring. So he's an Indian, so they don't celebrate Christmas very much. You phone them on Christmas, New Year's Day. He said, I'll leave a message on the answer phone at Annandale just to say, could you get back to me? Well, he phoned a guy called David Ashton Hyde, who's the distillery manager, was there on New Year's Day. He's from Ceylon. His mum was from Ceylon anyway. He was there working. So they end up having a 2-hour conversation. And we arrange, I go up, we meet David again, we have all this discussion. And we start to think, well, maybe there's more to this than, just, a couple of 100 bottles of just buy some whiskey and put it in a bottle. Maybe there's more to this. Now, David Thompson also owns a company called MMR, which is the biggest privately owned market research company in the world, I believe. So he's got a couple of quid. So he set those people on this mission, and their mission was to create a brand. And they're very excited because it was the first time they were taking a brand from a blank page, completely blank. This is your job. Create this brand. And then in conjunction with Keith, their second name escapes me, the blender, Keith and I and David started to work on the actual product. So it was two branches. One was creating the image and the brand awareness, and the other was the actual product, which I was interested in because I didn't want it ever to be a celebrity endorsement. Not that I'm a celebrity, but somebody say, I don't know, but somebody saying this is my whiskey, they go click, click, click like that, and he's gone, forget it, and he'll get, whatever they get. I didn't want that. I wanted this in there to be what I like and what I wanted to create. And so it wasn't a quick journey. It was a journey of 2 years of Keith going away, creating talking to me, talking to David. We discussed things, and he would go away and he'd create maybe 20 different samples, and we'd meet up again and we'd try them and go,
Should we try some?
Yeah. Like, what do you think? We've done all, let's do, and he'd go, right, okay. And he'd go away, and, 3 months later, he'd come back with 20 more, and it just carried on like that. And it was closer and closer and closer. And then eventually we had, I think it was 4, and we've got it in video somewhere, we sat there and David says, well, test them, see what you think. And I went, it's that one. So, and that was it. And that's the whiskey. Yeah.
It's definitely wax them open, James. I think the so funny enough, the guy I interviewed last week, Gordon Ramsay's business partner, right, is loads of people thought basically Gordon Ramsay had discovered this guy's pans. He's basically invented this new fucking frying pan, right? And Gordon Ramsay had tried. Let's get some of that water.
Yeah.
Gordon Ramsay had tried the...
Oh, that's a good idea. Put it in from... Let me pour that out, give you some fresh water.
Thank you. Yeah, seals it well.
Now, I've got to tell you, when we're up in Edinburgh on Sunday, there's a place round the corner from the World of Whiskey Experience where we're doing the tasting, all the bringing it out. It's a cigar place. They do cigars and whiskey, and they had a blind tasting last week, and they had Storyman in there and various other high-level whiskies. One being Johnny Walker Blue Label, 250 quid a bottle. Every single time, Storyman.
Really?
Best. Ours is 50 quid.
Let's give it a whirl.
50 quid. Just a wee,
And it's
wee touch.
that's awesome, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of rich texture to that.
How creamy is it? Smooth.
So smooth. So smooth.
Yeah.
And so how many iterations did you go through to get to that?
Oh, God.
Just canvas kind of thing.
Couple of hundred. Maybe. Getting down there. Just getting it narrowed. Yeah.
And then the branding, so I think story, man, as I said to you, I think every brand is ultimately a story, right? Really and truly.
Shame my ugly mug is there, but they insisted on it. Wasn't he?
Just do it is a story. Just do it is a thing that links Nike to its consumers. Just do it is when I'm like, right, I need to go to the gym today. It's like, just do it. It's a story that you tell yourself when you see Ronaldo on the TV or whoever sponsors or Federer taking that service. Is that just do it? So what is the story you're trying to get across as a brand, or what's your mission with the brand?
Well, I want the public to know that.
That's so warm as well.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Lovely. Yeah.
That this is not me just endorsing something. This is the spirit of Scotland, and it's the best that we could possibly make it. It is the best. The money wasn't a concern. This is the best we can possibly make it, and I just want people to know that, and know that it's not a cheap whiskey. It's about £50 or whatever, but we want to get it out there to the wider world, and so when you're buying a bottle of Storyman, you're buying the very best that some hugely talented people could do. It's right there. And it is. You've tasted it.
Yeah. It's delicious. And what's the game plan in terms of the strategy of getting it out there? Do you want it to be like a brand you pick up in Waitrose? Do you want it to keep what's the...
I wouldn't like to think it'll be one of these, I want people that, there's that sort of, there's whiskey that you drink, that stuff, catches you in the back of the throat and things. There's that, it doesn't cost very much. And then you have incredibly high-end whiskies. But I want to make something that is the best we could produce it is a sort of when you're talking about fine whiskey, it's very reasonably priced. That was one of the things that it was interesting because there's a lot of Americans at this thing on Sunday, and a lot of them said, and it's so reasonably priced as well. I thought, gee, really? And the Americans just loved it, and we had a preponderance of. You've got to remember, it's the Fringe in Edinburgh, so there's a lot of international people there, but a lot of American, a lot of Indian, and a lot of Asian, a lot of Chinese folk. They were the main buyers of it. So we've got a Chinese distributor who's working on that, and I'm going to go out to China later this year to some exhibitions and get out there, because they're big whiskey drinkers out there. And they really look for quality. They really do.
I'm going to have to pick you. There's a guy who's been on this podcast called Chris D, who's got a business called Malt DAC, which is basically like an exchange for whiskey.
Oh, okay.
Buys and sellers. Did you know people now buy whiskey? There's like a second-hand market for whiskey.
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to him because he's got a... that's his whole business model. And it's now like, it's such a cherished thing to keep fine whiskies, right?
Yeah.
That's mad. And I think I quite like how you've got a vision to stay good and not scale. Do you know what I mean?
No, we don't want to. I mean, you know, you hear these horror stories of these, you know, grain whiskies just pouring out fucking millions of gallons of this stuff. You know, that's not us. It'll always be made at Annandale. And therefore it's, you know, we're never going to swap the world with it. You know, you'll be able to find it, but we're going to keep it. You know, we'll turn it over, and as the public hopefully demand more, we'll try and make more. But we're never going to push ourselves to diminish the quality of it, and that blend will never ever change. That's it.
It's so reassuring for the listeners who are food and drink founders, because there is this whole, if you get pulled into the vortex of Instagram and LinkedIn, it's like scale at all costs. And it's like, the more conversations I've had about this, there's actually something about scale in your ability to stay good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You've got to stay great.
Yeah.
One thing that's been, and I don't want to give you names, don't give me names here, but I've got to go back to something just because it really spiked my curiosity. But we've talked about Danny and Mel as being great directors, and they gave, you know, this is great for leadership in terms of eking out, making you feel comfortable, rousing the group, being the last man there. Is there any example of really bad directors you work with? And don't give me names, don't have to give me the film, but just examples of where it hasn't been great as like a contrast.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to sort of specifically name directors.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Don't name them. Yeah,
it's very obvious very quickly when someone doesn't have it. You get discovered so quickly. I mean, everyone knows that they're no good.
And how does that sort of manifest on a set?
In a couple of days, you know, all of a sudden, even the caterer, they know. You know.
Oh, really?
And,
so yeah. The good directors have almost like a authority about them as they walk on set.
Yeah,
that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, a few more things to conscious of your time, James. Well,
no, don't worry. That's loads of time.
I'm loving this, but
I want to find out about this frying pan.
Do you like your cooking?
Oh, I love cooking.
Oh, mate, you need to try this. So it's called Hexclad.
Hectoclad.
Hexclad. HEXCLAD.
Uh-huh.
So this guy, funnily enough, Danny Weiner, I was interviewing last week. He called in from LA.
Uh-huh.
And he got this.
Is it Danny Weiner or Danny Weiner?
Okay, Danny Weiner. Yeah. He cooks wieners in his prime time for sure. Lovely guy. And he had this Swedish guy called him up. And a bit like you, in terms of him just following his passion, following his purpose, end up flying to China. He kept flying to China. And this Swedish guy basically said to him, like, you'll find a business idea over there. Just make sure you keep going to China. And he thought, and it's just, again, a lot of life is, it was this thing pulling him. I don't know what happened. It's a bit like you with your acting, right? Yeah. And he would get going to the Ritz-Carlton. He couldn't afford to stay there, but he kept going. He's like, just hang out in that room and something good will happen. Uh-huh. And he tried to be an actor, funnily enough. Uh-huh. Yeah, he tried to be an actor and failed in Hollywood, became very disenchanted, disillusioned with it. And then he got into cookware as like a way to make some money. This is like 20 years previously. Mm-hmm. Anyway, he was meant to go into this one exhibition room, and I think it was the leader of Korea or something like that. But anyway, there was a whole troop of soldiers blocking the barricade there because he was like passing through. Yeah. There's an exhibition centre, so he couldn't get into the room he wanted for that period of time. It was short on time. So he took a left, and talk about sliding doors moments, found this technology called Hexclad, and he was like, oh my God, that's the idea. And now it's a multi-million pound brand. It's used by Hailey Bieber. It's used by Halle Berry. And basically what it is every Michelin star restaurant in the world uses it. Is basically, well, not every, that's an exaggeration, I exaggerate, but Gordon Ramsay found it, fell in love with it, and then he reached out to Danny, said, look, this is amazing. I want to be your partner. And it was, Gordon came up with the analogy, or the metaphor, I should say, that it's the Rolls Royce of cooking pans. And it's basically, it's non-stick, it's so easy to cook. You can get the heat, the temperature. It's this amazing cookware pans. They've gone into knives. But yeah, I'll send you a link.
Yeah,
You like your cooking.
Yeah.
But it's a great story in terms of just following that purpose, or following that thing, and just as you so rightly said, doors. He said the same thing. Doors are going to shut, but you just keep going. It's just,
there you go.
it's the stickability. Really, really good guy. And like, we're going to try and get beers when he's next in London. But one thing you said, I think is learning from your dad. You said the act defines the character inside himself. What's the good and the bad, the dark, and how to access it. I think your dad said, think it, be it.
That's true.
Right,
yeah.
think it, be it. Yeah. I think this is a great lesson for life, right? In terms of having confidence with doing a podcast, or have confidence going to a buyer's meeting, having confidence going on a date. Like, think it, be it, right? What has been the hardest role you've had to play? And how did you think it and then be it?
There's two. One was it was a show called Silent Witness, and they asked me to play this character who was, God, it was so dark. He was obsessed by Milton's Paradise Lost, and
Milton's Paradise. Why do I know that?
it's a long, famous poem about the fall of Satan, and it's a deeply religious poem, long poem. But this character, this guy, was obsessed by it. But he was also a serial killer who kidnapped and tortured young girls to death. And they've caught him, and they want him to talk, and it's all about that. And so when it was interesting because I read the parts. I was very it was fascinating. So I went. I found two cops, through a friend of mine that's a detective, or was a detective, and he put me in touch with these guys whose job, one was retired and one had retired, but he came back because he was so good at his job, which was getting people who'd killed some people, and they thought maybe there's some more, to get them to talk. And they were both very, very good. But it was very disappointing because I had meetings with both of them separately. And I said, what? Is there something, is there a hook? Is there something that you go, yeah, you've done this before, Like, is there anything that you can observe? And both of them said, no. There's nothing. There's nothing. He can be quiet and timid, slight, not physical at all. He can be loud, aggressive. He can be the same as any of us. Just pick anyone in the street. Him, that guy over there. Could be a serial killer. You think, how would you start to portray that guy? And I was just talking about that. When we're talking about preparing, that subliminal process that's going on in your subconscious while you're not thinking about it, but you are. I turned up and I'd spoken to a friend of mine who's an actor the night before, and I said, Christian, I have got no idea about this guy. I said, I'm fucked. I don't even know.
This is for the audition?
No, this is actually to shoot.
Right.
I would just be offered the parts. I said, I've got no idea of his accent. And Christian said, anyway, so I turn up there. I'm still in the morning, turn up. And I was sitting in the makeup chair, and he's been in prison, for like this. We were shooting it a bit back to front, so he's been in prison for quite a while. And I said to the girl, "Could you, a beard a wee bit longer than this?" I said, "Could you put extensions in there and plait them?" So he's got plaited things down there. And I said, "Put some sort of tattoos that you would do yourself, with a bit of ink out of a biro and a needle, just sort of like random things." Because I thought somebody that's been in prison and has no autonomy, there's nothing he can do except change himself, make himself something else. And I was sitting looking at the mirror, and she was doing my hand, and it's as if the guy walked into the room and sat in my head. I knew what the accent was. I walked out of the makeup room. I knew exactly who he was. And that, not because he had come to me, but that subliminal process.
What do you mean by subliminal process?
Well, just a subconscious conversation that your brain is having, that your conscious brain isn't aware of, but it's having that conversation. And that's why you think, light bulb moment. It wasn't a light bulb moment. You're subconsciously been cogitating and working things out, and then presents it to your conscious brain, and you think, "Oh, I've just thought of the whole thing." Like a poet can just suddenly go, like as Robert Burns did in his famous poem Tam O'Shanter, like, "Oh my God," and just wrote it all down.
Yeah, so I write.
That wasn't an instant thing. There'd been so much going on in your subconscious.
This is the ability to access the subconscious.
Yeah.
And so then what was the accent of this weird
It was
obsessed with the Lord Paradise Lost?
It was just a whiny sort of South London accent, which didn't suit his physicality because he was big, and I used to work weights a lot, so he had big muscles and things. But he had this sort of whiny voice, and he was sort of insidious. So it was all there, and so that was a tough one to do, because he, like when you're dealing with all that dark, horrible, pretending to talk. Anyway, it sort of follows you around for a wee while. That darkness of the soul. You think, "Oh, gee."
So do you have to go into the darkness of your soul to pull that into the? Is that what you think the best actors do?
Yeah.
And what is, because one of the questions I'm obsessed with is, what is the 1% difference, right? Because it's with everything. There's a 1% difference, and I asked this to a guy I interviewed the other week, and I did a live podcast, and he'd made, I know it's not all about the money, but he built some really big brands to be proud of, like Vita Coco, guys named Charles Brooke, and a kids brand called Bear Snacks, the huge sort of food and drink title. I was like, "What's different about you?" Because we're in front of about 130 people. I was like, we could all line up and do 8 hours of work a week or 100 hours work a week. That does not mean you're going to be Charles Brooke. There are millions of actors who could do 100-hour work weeks. Doesn't mean they're going to be the next DiCaprio or James Cosmo. What is the difference between those who are in the 1%? What do you think? Is it that they can go into the darker places better? Like, I don't know. What would you say that is?
Well, I think there's, in my profession, there's a huge amount of luck, isn't it? Being, willing to be in that swim, and always being ready to take, to jump in and test the water, see, push yourself, see how far you can go, see how brave you are as an actor.
By brave?
By being willing, like Solzhenitsyn, Alexander Solzhenitsyn said that there is no...
So is that, sorry?
Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote a wonderful book called The Gulag Archipelago about Russia after the war, and he was in the gulags, the concentration camps that the communists set up. Millions died, I think, from since Stalin took over in, 1930-something, to 1954, about 60 million people were killed by the communists. And he wrote a book. He was prisoner in the gulags. He survived, but he wrote a wonderful, hugely profound book called The Gulag Archipelago that helped to bring down the Soviet Union when it hit the West. But it's a profoundly moving book. But he wrote that the good and evil does not exist out there. Good and evil run through the heart of everyone. There is huge good and there is huge evil in everyone. It depends which wolf you feed. If you feed the good wolf by being good, then that good wolf will get bigger and stronger, and it will dominate the bad wolf. Bad wolf will never go away, because if you feed him, he'll get stronger. But so you have to be willing to, as an actor, to access that bad wolf for a while, the evil that's in everyone, and try and understand. That's why I find it strange when people say, the TV garbage, oh, this monster that did this. It's not a monster. He's a human being that let the bad wolf out and didn't feed the good wolf. And there's no such things as monsters. There's humans that do monstrous things, but there aren't any monsters.
It's like Joe Rogan says, everyone started out as a baby. So even it's in terms of we start as a baby, whether we get fed, the good wolf gets fed or the bad wolf, for example. Yeah. But we all start out as a baby. Yeah. And it's like whether you get, say you're born in Glasgow in abhorrent conditions, by default, as we were talking about earlier, your bad wolf's going to get fed just by environmental. Yeah. Ethan and I got fucking lucky, like literally so lucky that we've been by default fed more good wolf, just by luck. It's so much luck. Yeah. But as you say, to say everyone's a monster is quite a reductionist way of putting it, I think. Yeah. In terms of like, how does someone, because I obsess with creativity, I think it's just the subliminal thing. Have you ever read the book The War of Art?
No.
You need to read that. It's a really short book, but I think you'll really like it from what you're saying to me. But it's almost like we've got this darkness in us that we need to access, and that is the creativity. So it's like, and sometimes that darkness can manifest itself in great things, but then there's also like a nefarious side effect of that. For example, like Jimi Hendrix, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, they all use that dark wolf. Yeah. To create great things, but then there was still some darkness there. Yeah. How do you dig into that darkness, like, and then let it bubble out into the role? And do you see what I mean? Yeah,
I do. I wish I could explain it, Dan, but you do, and that character appeared, and you realise that to him, that all through his life, he was making micro decisions that were leading him down a road, a very dark road. And you just got to accept that. And when he was doing these dreadful things, or, as an actor, doing these dreadful things to these young girls, he thought that was, in his mind, that was acceptable and the right thing to do.
Cool. A few more points, James. Yes. So we talked about the difference between those who make it and those who don't. Is there anything else on that? Of why does someone become... I know the luck's involved in all of this, but is there anything else?
I'm a great believer in not even to achieve a degree of success in something, but to achieve a degree of happiness as a human, that if you have a purpose that is moral and ethical and is not centered upon the self, I think you'll lead a much happier life. And I think that applies to people that run businesses and want to get out there in the marketplace. I think you've got to, it's like I don't suppose you've got any kids yet, but it's like when you have a kid, you suddenly realise that you're not number one in your life. You're not even number two. You're number three, because you've got your baby and the person that feeds your baby, that's your partner. And then way down the line, there's you, right? And you've got a job to do. And if you accept that, there's happiness. There's happiness. It's a life with purpose. And it's a life with a purpose that is good.
Yeah, I think there's a recurring theme in this, is this purpose. The bigger the purpose, it kind of eviscerates the ability to feel purposefulness.
Yeah.
No, sorry, purposeless. That's right way of saying it. Just quickly to wrap things up, and this is just for my own personal things, but what are your one or two favourite books or favourite stories of all time that have really spoke to your soul?
As I've previously mentioned, the Gulag Archipelago, and there's also another book called Man's Search for Meaning by a guy called Viktor Frankl.
I've read that. It's very good.
Yeah.
He's got that quote, which is, in between stimulus and response is man's ability to choose, and in that space is freedom. I love that quote.
Yeah.
So it's basically like, no matter what happens to you, you can't.
Yeah.
You control how you look at things. And I think that now you've said that quote speaks a lot to you.
Yeah.
Were there any roles that you wish you'd have gotten but didn't get? Is that you don't have that?
No. Whatever roles I've had. I believe that we go down a path, what, as my mum used to say, what's for you won't go by you. Life has a purpose, and you'll find out what it is. But don't despair in things that in false imaginings. If you again, that sliding door thing. If we didn't talk for 5 minutes more, well, maybe you wouldn't be on that motorway when somebody crashed their car and you hit them. It's life. That's the way it goes. All you can do is do your best all the way through it. Really do your best, and trust to a higher purpose that things will work out.
What's one sentence of wisdom you could say to the James when he was 17, when he was working on the shipyards? I think it was shipyards. Shipbreakers, sorry.
Yeah.
Now, with more experience, what would that one piece of wisdom be, do you think?
Read the Bible.
Because
it's it gives you a grounding in man's purpose and being here. And if you don't believe, I'm not saying Christian or whatever, but if you don't believe in a God, as they say, you'll believe in something. And that's not so good. And it's been proven many times over. The lack of a God, a good and just God, a moral God in your life, if it's not there, there's a big gap, and you will find something to fill that gap. And it might not be as glorious as believing in God.
Yeah, it goes back to the purpose piece.
Yep.
The final question is, what are some of your favourite films that when you watch again and again and again, you learn something new?
Oh, James, it's not actually a film, Dan. It's a TV series. And it was True Detective with Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson.
I've watched that.
And it's such a beautifully crafted piece of work, from the writing to the direction to the acting to the art department. Everything about it is so beautifully nuanced and deep, and you can go deeper and deeper and deeper into that show. It's just amazing.
That's because it's the garden. It's the kid on the like lawnmower who's done it, isn't it? I think.
Yeah.
I've watched it. Yeah, I remember that being really.
I watched it
scary
6 or 8 times, and the more you see it, the deeper the characters, You know, you see the flaws, you see the it's wonderfully worked out. It's fantastic.
Well, that's one of life's most underrated experiences: rereading books, rewatching films the second, third, fourth time. On the film note, are there any films like that give you close to that True Detective feeling at all?
I'll let you know on that.
Yeah, let me
Come to me.
James, been an absolute pleasure. I've loved that.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
I really appreciate it.
Great to talk with you.